So, good morning. Thank you for joining us for part one of our COVID-19 EU series. It's our pleasure to be joined today with our friends and partners from EMG, Expat Management Group, Dominic, Coen, and Nihat, who are going to give us some updates regarding the Netherlands. Now, as I know that one of your main concerns, Dominic and Nihat, is not just to meet a high level of services, which we all try to meet, and ensure compliance, but it's also to meet your clients' needs that go beyond immigration. So I would think that this COVID-19 period has been extremely challenging for you, and we'd like to hear a little bit how you met those challenges.
All right, Fiona, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. And for the persons on the Asia Pac side, good evening. Fiona, so we have seen, obviously, on Friday, we have seen that there's an extension of the travel ban into the Schengen area for at least until the 15th of June. So we will see that will have a major impact on immigration into Europe or the Schengen area in general. And we're focusing today on the Netherlands, so I can definitely answer that for the Netherlands. So we can still file immigration applications in the Netherlands, although there's a big difference in handling immigration for entry visa nationals like Indian nationals, whereby a consular application is still required. And they can enter with a special type of visa into the Netherlands and the remainder of the Schengen area. But there's a difference with non-entry nationals like U.S. nationals, whereby they are currently unable to enter without a Dutch residence visa or ID card, or an ID card issued by one of the Schengen states. So we see obstacles there, we see delays there. However, what we do see in the Netherlands is the Dutch immigration authorities are quite flexible. So we compare it to other countries, we see that the Netherlands is quite open and flexible. The immigration desks are open. I give an example. It's possible to extend a Schengen visa while you're in the Netherlands if you can prove that you're unable to leave the country because the destination country does not allow you in, or you have obviously good stay longer in the Netherlands, whereby you can by phone get an extension of a local fee.
By phone?
So by phone, exactly. So that is
on short term as well?
Yeah, so by phone you can get a short-term extension of the visa in case you can obviously prove that you're unable to fly. But however, I've seen a case in practice that if there's a very expensive flight back to Asia, but the flights are going, then you cannot get that extension because the authorities know that you actually can fly back. So there's a little bit, but there's a lot of flexibility there. But in principle, the consulates are closed, meaning that, yes, we can file immigration applications, but for many entry visa nationals like Indian nationals, Chinese nationals, we require a special visa to enter the Netherlands. So we can get applications approved, but they cannot go and visit the consulates because they're in principle closed. There are exceptions for some emergency applications. What is quite interesting now to see as well is we generally call the immigration authorities for also setting up appointments. Now it is turned on in terms of that the authorities now say, we are going to call you if we have a spot. So they proactively have a very big list and by prioritizing immigration applications, the authorities call us and say, I have a spot for this and this employee. Do you want to have this spot? So it's changed now. And these appointments are for ID, for fingerprinting, for different type of visa.
And do you see that there is a move into online tools by the administration for this rather than phoning? Can you now, for example, take your appointments, which maybe in the past you couldn't, but can you now take them online? And that move has been due to the COVID?
No. So that's not a difference there for Dutch immigration authorities. So we are very technical immigration authority, they're quite, so we already file a lot of immigration applications online. So it's always digital, also for extensions. So, and the extensions and the application are approved. We can also pick up the approvals online. But the setting up of the appointments, if a physical appointment is required, then you have to attend the appointment. But the approvals are indeed all done online. And in case a person, for instance, already in a country, they can continue to work because we have filed the applications in time, and we have obtained the approvals in time.
Okay. Now, what about the consulates abroad? Are they open? Are they functioning normally? Can anybody apply for a visa?
So the consulates are in principle fully closed, meaning, and we have also in the recent years, the Dutch authorities have closed the number of consulates worldwide anyway. So there's now quite limited consulates anyway. And but in terms of getting immigration application approved, yes, as mentioned, this is possible. However, the consulates are closed unless you can prove that you have an emergency and that you really need to be in the country. Obviously, we have a lot of clients that say it's very important that my employee visits the Netherlands to perform work activities, but we're more talking about emergency appointments, for instance, for certain staff that can help in in this whole pandemic.
So it's not like now in Spain, where in Spain, if the host company in Spain signs and justifies that the person is required for a project work without it being an emergency, you can actually obtain the visa. So that you can't do for the Netherlands.
It's a possibility. So they open a few slots for emergency, but also for companies that require certain employees. For instance, if they need to be there for certain also reparation, installation of very urgent things, there's a possibility for that. But again, you have to convince them, and a letter of the employer would be a very handy tool in that respect.
Okay. So as we've decided that these are going to be very, very short interviews, as you know, I do have one final question probably, which is, what would be your suggestions today for best practices for companies that do need to transfer employees over the coming months?
Right. I think I'll take that question then, Fiona.
Sure.
Well, in terms of best practices and recommendations, what we first of all, there's an interesting development that we see is that some of our clients, in case they have urgent or immediate projects, they are reviewing actually whether there are any employees in the Netherlands who are able, who are on the bench or who are finishing up on other projects or are scheduled to depart actually, on whether they could potentially work on these new projects. So that in case there are non-EU nationals, that we can extend the permits so that they can continue to stay and work in the Netherlands. Because as Nihat just said, the embassies and the consulates abroad are in principle closed, meaning that if you file a new application outside the EU, then in principle you cannot. Well, currently you cannot enter the Netherlands unless it's an emergency. So we see that a lot of HR and mobility professionals in the corporate world are now reviewing to alternative options. In terms of recommendations, that really comes in line that what we also advise our clients is that if they have projects going on, we would advise them to review the current population within the Schengen area, for instance, and see whether these employees could handle the project or work in the Netherlands, if not in the Netherlands. So because those transferring within the Schengen zone, they can in principle cross the border into the Netherlands and complete immigration processes. So while your employees would normally come from outside the EU, India, South Africa, you name it, they are now looking at their other offices in the Schengen area where they might transfer those employees to the Netherlands. And then it's not a guarantee at this point. We have to review that on a case-by-case basis. But in principle, within the Schengen area, there's a lot more flexibility in possibilities to travel and complete immigration processes in the Netherlands.
And do you have confinement for those entering from the Schengen states or not?
So confinement, you mean like in
quarantine? Yes.
Yeah. So we don't oblige anything here. So that doesn't really, that's not really the Dutch style. However, we do
recommend.
Well, the government recommends that if you're coming from a hot zone, well, I think nowadays there are more hot zones than the regular zones. But if you are coming from a hot zone, make sure that you are that you stay at home in the Netherlands for 2 weeks. Try to be at home as much as possible. But of course, that doesn't mean that you can't work and that you can't do your work, obviously.
Okay.
Secondly, we, as Nihat mentioned, applications can still be filed and have them approved, even for those who are outside the EU. So, as the actual move largely depends on the consulates being opened and or being allowed to travel into the Netherlands, and given that there are no fixed end dates on these current restrictions, we do advise that that clients have their employment contracts or assignment letters included with a let's call it a flexible start date. And in case they need to use a start date in the paperwork, to use a pro forma start date of the applications. The advantage here is that applications can nonetheless be approved, and the salary thresholds that normally apply in the Netherlands, they only kick in once the employee has effectively landed in the Netherlands. Of course, you need to communicate on that with the immigration authorities, but at least gives you an option to keep going with your applications, if that works. Finally, if I may add one more,
Please.
we strongly advise our clients always to check, and we do that on their behalf also nowadays, is to check on any lockdown measures in the country of departure, which may have an impact on Dutch immigration process. Because even though at some point there is no restriction or hold up anymore from a Dutch perspective, the home country may still have restrictions in place. To give an example, it might well be that even though employees at some point can travel again to the Netherlands, complete consulate process and travel to the Netherlands, because the local authorities in the home country are perhaps still closed, they have a different policy there, family members are, for example, not able to complete legalization processes or vital documents. And as such, they cannot complete the immigration process and cannot travel to the Netherlands. So so coming to that, we do advise that we more than ever check the local or in the country of departure also on what the impact is on Dutch immigration process.
I certainly agree with that. I'm going to give everybody an example. We've had a very recent case of a Japanese national who's here in France, and actually he's going to be transferred to Belgium and could have filed in the past 2 months, except that he needs a police clearance certificate. And up until last week, everything was shut down. You couldn't obtain a police clearance certificate here in France. So it's exactly what you're saying. It may be that for the Netherlands, one can file, but if certain documents are required and there's a lockdown from that administration in the country where you're living or your country of origin, you may not be able to get the documents. Very good advice, point to be remembered. I'd like to thank you, both of you, Nihat and Dominic. This has been very interesting. I'm sure we're going to have many more moments where we can come back and update everybody. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.